This is Ken Barron from the National Association of Black and White Men Together. Today I want to talk about British immigration policy and how it relates to the United States. In what might be a harbinger for our trends in US immigration policy, a UK plan denies entry to low-skilled foreign workers. As a result, industries expect labor shortages. Prime Minister Boris Johnson wants immigrants to meet requirements for skills, qualifications, and English-speaking ability. I have special interest in this because I'm a former UK resident. So, if you're in your local Starbucks in England, the plan would exclude your, quote, low-skilled immigrant barista. This has ignited a nationwide outcry from business groups and employers who warned that the restrictions could cripple a broad swath of industries. Here in the US, we are familiar with the aggressive policies of our government. I have podcasted on, for example, the crisis that led federal immigration authorities to bus nearly 2,000 unaccompanied children from shelters around the country to a tent city in the desert of Texas. And the Trump administration has proposed that would make it harder for legal immigrants to become citizens or get green cards if they have ever used a range of popular public welfare programs, including Obamacare. Likewise, the UK immigration policy would make it far more difficult for nationals of European Union countries to live and work in Britain beginning next year, when the last month's formal departure from the European Union takes effect. Critics have predicted many of those will be to Britain's long-term detriment. As Britain leaves its membership in the EU, partly based on anti-immigrant sentiment, this reminds me of the populism and xenophobia that has swept other European countries over the last several years. This also mirrors that of President Trump's policies, which favor an immigration system that would essentially exclude the poor and unskilled. The new rules demand that immigrant workers speak English. Many currently do not. It is reasonable to expect that this assistance to learn becomes a bilingual or even a polyglot idea. If you come from the EU to Britain over the last 15 years, you would not qualify for a work visa under the new standards, which require a well-paying job offer from an approved employer. Then there are the jobs that could be freed up by these rules for native Brits. Care workers looking after aging Brits, construction workers out in all weathers getting the job done. Will these jobs be taken up by others? Here in the US, we have some background on this approach, and it is mostly myth. 7.6% of immigrants are self-employed compared to 5.6% of native-born Americans, and they founded more than 40% of Fortune 500 companies, according to the Bush Center. Likewise, the average European migrant arriving in the UK in 2016 will contribute £78,000 more than they take out in public services and benefits over their time spent in the UK. And the average non-European migrant will make a positive net contribution of £28,000 while living here. Now, by comparison, the average UK citizen's net lifetime contribution in this scenario is zero. This is according to the Oxford Economics, a leader in global forecasting and quantitative analysis. Also, according to the Center on Budget policy priorities, immigrants contribute to the U.S. economy in many ways. They work at high rates and make up more than a third of the workforce in some industry, and the geographic mobility helps local economies respond to worker shortages, smoothing out bumps that could otherwise weaken the economy. Immigrant workers help support the aging native-born population, increasing the number of workers as compared to retirees and bolstering the Social Security and Medicare trust funds. And children born to immigrant families are upwardly mobile, promising future benefits not only to their families, but to the U.S. economy overall. Back in the UK, Johnson's government said the new rules would open up the UK to the brightest and the best from around the world, while ending reliance on, quote, cheap, low-skilled labor coming into the country. The government may allow certain exceptions to stem labor shortages in certain fields, but the policy makes clear that the Johnson government is determined to make fundamental changes in the composition of the country's low-skilled immigrant workforce. The move is meant to encourage people with the, quote, right talent to come to the country, and the new system was meant to encourage employers to retain staff, employ more British nationals, and move towards automation where possible. Sounds familiar? Here in the U.S., the nonpartisan American Immigration Council proposes that, quote, America's strength lies in its openness and dynamic character. Current concerns about the U.S. economy should not distract from an understanding that in the long term, Americans' economic success requires a nation to attract, one, skilled professionals from across the globe to increase the competitiveness of American companies, and two, workers at the lower end of the skill spectrum to fuel the growth of U.S. labor force, filling jobs created by the aging of the population, end quote. This leads me to ponder on the issue of healthcare and immigration, both in the UK and the US. Now recently, I fell sick in the UK and benefited from excellent care provided by, in part, immigrant care workers. Healthcare executives in the UK have expressed concern and alarm on the new proposals, saying employers needed time to adapt to the end of a free movement from elsewhere in the EU. Johnson's government hopes to put this new points-based system in place in 10 months as part of the overall new agreement governing trade and other matters with the EU. In the US, Trump is preparing to unilaterally and fundamentally change the US system for legal immigration in ways that would restrict immigration to the wealthiest and most privileged applicants. The Center for American Progress notes that under a new policy, a federal immigration provision known as, quote, public charge test will be reinterpreted to limit both family unity and diversity-based immigration in ways that are a radical departure from our current immigration law. Under the rewritten test, people would generally fall in categories, and as such, if they have income resources of less than 250% of the federal poverty guidelines, that's about $30,000, or had a medical condition and no unsubsidized source of health insurance, again, they would not be able to come in. The authors estimate that would happen if all people in the United States, US-born citizens and immigrants alike, had to take this test. That's more than 100 million people, about 1/3 of the US population, would fail if they were required to take it today. Meanwhile, the UK Home Secretary said that the labour shortage could be made up with the 8 million Britons currently deemed economically inactive. But experts said that figure includes people unlikely to look for jobs, students, the recently retired, the long-term sick, and those providing care to family members. The UK building industry is very reliant on immigrant labour, with 14% of the workforce coming from outside the UK. That figure is 54% in London. Beginning in January 2021, the new rules with the workers arriving with skills, qualification, and an English-speaking ability, the salary and profession will be checked for EU and non-EU citizens alike, though not to the more than 3 million EU citizens already living or working in the UK. Coincidentally, under the new rules, those wanting to work in Britain will need an offer from a known employee for a salary of at least £25,600, which is £33,000 a year, with some exceptions in certain fields. This mirrors the US situation. Under the plan, UK immigration will be slashed from the current level of more than 200,000 people a year. All of these harsh moves across both sides of the Atlantic fly in the face of the NABWMT values. We are committed to fostering respect, honesty, and communication among people of different races and cultural backgrounds. We are a gay, multiracial, multicultural organization for all people. This is Ken Scott Barron with the National Association of Black and White Men Together. Thank you for listening. You can catch more of these podcasts and videocasts on nabwmt.org. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I hope to hear from you soon, and have a great time, a great day. Thank you.